For hundreds of years, the Russian government has battled with nationalist and Islamist militants from a northern Caucasian group known as the Chechens. The Chechen people have always sought to unite the northern Caucasus under one flag of Islam, so they could all have protection from foreign threats. With this in mind, they have claimed the land that they occupy as sovereign state, known as Chechnya, and any encroachment on their well-being is received as a violent act against their traditional homeland.
The Russians, on the other hand, see this as a cause for irredentism. The Chechen people are considered a Russian ethnicity, thus they must be under the control of the Russian government. Long before the uprisings began, the Russians had the Caucasus region under their control since the late 1500s, after Tsar Ivan the Terrible conquered those regions from the nomadic hordes. To the Russians, these are their lands by claim. To the Chechens, this means nothing.
The Chechen uprisings today are based off of the original uprising back in 1785, led by a man named Sheikh Mansour. Mansour was a Muslim imam who preached the word of Islam to the northern Caucasus region in hopes of encouraging the various mountain peoples to unite and protect themselves against Russian invasion. Russia, seeing this as a threat to their interests in the region, sent a force to capture him in what would transpire to be the First Chechen-Russian War.
The fighting raged on from 1785 to 1791, when Mansour was captured during the siege of Anapa fortress in Turkey. He was then taken to St. Petersburg to be imprisoned for life, where he died in captivity in 1794. The Chechen people, even today, try to live up to the legacy Mansour had given off, and his words of wisdom are reasons to fight for the Chechen cause. His status as a cultural icon are what bring the people of Chechnya together.
The mountain range of Ossetia, which surrounds Chechnya, is a very strategic area, for it contains a valley known as the Daryal Pass. This is one of the only two crossings of the Caucasus mountain range, the other being Durban Pass. In 1774, the Russians gained control of this region and built forts there, which angered the Chechens, and was the first signs of encroachment by the Russians in the region.
The height of oppression by the Russians, however, was during the Caucasian War, lasting from 1817 to 1864. The Russian Empire invaded the entire region of the Caucasus Mountains, resulting in complete annexation and ethnic cleansing of many peoples in the mountains. During the war, however, Imam Shamil, the leader of Dagestan, united the many Caucasus nations under one banner in 1834. This was a turning point in the war, for various battles shifted in their favor after this unification.
Although they lost the war, the Chechens were granted autonomy, despite being integrated as a state in the Russian Empire. Historically, the unification of the Caucasus Mountain region during the war is seen as the ideal country for the Chechens, and this will be used as their historic model for years to come.
Russia, especially in modern times, will not only claim the region for irredentism, but for the abundance of oil in the region. Chechnya and other parts of the region belong to the oldest oil and gas producing facilities in Russia. This could only accelerate hostilities in the area, as the race for oil has a clear winner: who has it and who does not.
Chechnya's economy, with or without oil, would falter anyways. To most first world nations, they are not recognized politically as a sovereign nation, and are not even considered by said countries to be traded with. Without stable support from other nations, their economy would stall, with no standard currency other than the Russian ruble to keep them afloat.
After hundreds of years of oppression and fighting, there is no doubt that the worst conflicts surrounding the Chechen-Russian conflict are the First and Second Chechen Wars of the early to late 1990s and the early 2000s. Over 50 to 80,000 soldiers and civilians were killed in these wars. The Chechen insurgency is still ongoing, more than 15 years after the wars are over.
Chechnya as a country is no longer existent, but the militants are considered a terrorist group by the United Nations and the Russian government. Chechnya now exists as a state within Russia, and the former government has either been exiled to a foreign country, imprisoned for treason, or executed in the heat of battle with Russian troops. The current president, Ramzan Kadyrov, even claimed in 2016 that the war with Russia was over.
Despite the heavy losses for Chechnya, the economy of the region has slowly bolstered without the constant encroachment of Russian officials. Skyscrapers have gone up in Grozny, the capital city, and the unemployment rate has decreased from 32% to 13%. Many remain homeless, however, as much of the housing was destroyed in the fighting. Ongoing reconstruction efforts have been rebuilding the area at a fast pace, with new housing, new infrastructure, and even a new mosque.
Hundreds of thousands of Chechens have been displaced by the war. 300,000 were displaced at the height of the war in 2000. Most were internally displaced inside of Chechnya or the neighboring republics, but thousands of refugees went into exile in several European Union nations.
Culturally, the Chechens still have a place. The Russian government has allowed mosques to open up in the region, so that Chechens may practice their religion freely. The language of Chechen is still considered an official language within the republic, but Russian takes dominance over it. The lifestyles of Chechen people don't differ very much from the Russians, as they all eat the same food, live in the same type of housing, and wear the same types of clothes.
As expected, the population of Russia fared better than the Chechens. With the many conflicts out of the way, the Russian economy experienced a boom, with the stocks higher than ever before. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, used his victory during the Second Chechen Wars as a campaign platform for future elections, which propelled him to many victories afterwards.
Although many Russians returned to their homes, traumatized and xenophobic from the horrible things they saw during the fighting, there has been reported homicides based on race or ethnicity, typically coming from veterans experiencing forms of post-traumatic stress.
The Chechens did not go unscathed either. 77% of Chechens in 2006 reportedly experienced some sort of psychological distress. Chechens are used to feeling fear or discomfort due to always being at war with Russia. But for what reason could they be wrong? What could Russian irredentism cause them should a third conflict erupt? Would they be in an even worse state? Or would they actually gain their independence?